So glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about Graham Platner up in Maine and the implosion of that campaign, potentially. We'll also be taking a closer look at the Republicans' chance for defeating Gavin Newsom's redistricting bill or referendum, pretty much going up in flames as well. And we'll also be taking a close look at how the pressure is actually mounting on Democrats to end the government shutdown. So let's start right there. And Jim, the unions. There are multiple unions now weighing in, saying the shutdown's got to end, and it needs to end with the Republican clean extension of current government spending levels to be the answer here. First of all, NBC News. The country's largest union representing federal workers is calling for lawmakers to pass a short-term spending measure to immediately end the government shutdown, urging Democrats to abandon their current position and join Republicans in supporting a stopgap solution. The AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees president, Everett Kelly, wrote both parties have made their point and there's still no clear end in sight. It's time to pass a clean continuing resolution and end this shutdown today. No half measures, no gamesmanship, unquote. Also, pilots for major airlines are jumping into the fight, according to USA Today, with 3 pilot unions calling on Congress to end the stalemate by specifically passing the Republican-backed continuing resolution. The Coalition of Airline Pilots Association, the NetJets Association of Shared Aircraft Pilots, and the Allied Pilots Association, and a 4th union, Southwest Airlines Pilots Association, also endorsed the GOP plan the previous day. And so this comes as more than 3,300 flights were delayed across the U.S. yesterday, some of that due to the fact that staffing was short and there weren't enough people there to keep the flights on schedule. So, Jim, you talk about this a lot in the Jolt today. So far, there aren't any additional Democrats saying they're going to flip as a result of this pressure. But if the base, which is, this government union, gave all their support to Democrats last year, it's hopefully just a matter of time.
Well, Greg, as we've always said on this podcast, God bless the public sector union. Okay, no, you're talking about, politics makes for strange bedfellows. I think the American Federation of Government Employees, the air traffic controllers unions, the pilots unions, all have, they'd like to get paid for the work that they're doing. Right? Some of them have been sent home. Some of them have been told you're an essential worker, so we're going to make you keep working, and we will pay you for the work you're doing someday. Now, yes, these workers will get the back pay, but think about in your life, if you're not a federal government worker or not experiencing this right now, if your boss said we're not going to pay you this pay period, but you'll get that pay sometime later, you might be okay for the first pay period. It definitely would be a squeeze. You definitely weren't expecting to have to cover all of your usual bills out of savings. 2 pay periods, well, that all of a sudden turns into a lot more, more pressure. That pressure, it's not like your mortgage company is going to say, oh, we understand. By the way, there are certain people who are making certain exceptions for federal workers and stuff like that. There are food banks. There are people who are offering free coffee to workers, to federal government workers. But like most people, it's like the first couple, you can have a couple day government shutdown and most people would get through it just fine. The longer it goes on, the more you feel the pain. And in today's Morning Jolt, I tried to walk through, because there's been this sense of it's about Obamacare. Well, okay, what it really is about is back in 2021, in the American Rescue Plan Act, which not a single Republican voted for, passed with entirely Democratic votes. They said that if you're buying insurance on the exchanges set up under the Affordable Care Act, remember that was the official name.
Yeah. When
we say Obamacare, we're using slang, right? That expanded the eligibility for premium subsidies to individuals with incomes above 400% of the federal poverty line and with no upper income limit. Now, if you're wondering what the federal poverty line is, this year it is $62,600 for an individual, $128,600 for a family of 4. Now, different people can use different terms. I think most people would say that's not poor, right? That's like, you're certainly not feeling rich, but you may not be, you're definitely not feeling poor. Then they said, all right, well, in the Inflation Reduction Act, which, as we all know, reduced inflation, extended those enhanced premium and tax credits through 2025. Now, that's twice Democrats, with only votes of Democrats, have had a bite at the apple, and both times they said, well, this is just temporary because of the pandemic. It is now 2025. 92% of people who are buying on the exchanges get these premium tax credits. And now the Democrats are saying, we will not reopen the government until Republicans agree to make them permanent. Permanent! Now, they had a chance to do this in 2021. They did not choose to do that. They'd had a chance to do this in 2022. They did not do that then either. Why? Because it's really expensive. Because it's going to blow up the deficit and the debt. The Congressional Budget Office looked at the numbers last year and they said this is going to cost basically almost $500 billion, $488 billion over 10 years. And that's just 10 years. That's not continuing forever the way the Democrats want. So Democrats want the Republicans to extend a benefit that they didn't have the guts to extend permanently back when they controlled Congress. They want this giant increase in the deficit and the debt to happen on the Republican watch. And of course, it's not like they're proposing any ideas of how to deal with this giant new expense, right? So that's the demand. Nearly $500 billion. That's what they're saying it'll take to release the hostage. Now, I know in the past we haven't always liked this metaphor of hostage taking. But why is the government shut down? Well, right now, there's almost every Republican in the Senate, that's 53. Fetterman, Mastio, and Angus King are willing to vote to reopen the government, right? That gets you to 56. Mm-hmm. You need 4 more, right? Now, any 4 Democrats could end this tomorrow. Or they could end this today. They just go to Thune. By the way, occasionally if you look at the votes, you'll see Thune voting no. And I looked that up because I remembered there was a reason for this. If you want to do something called a motion to reconsider, which is let's vote on this thing again, there has to be a person on the side that won. So Thune at the last second changes his vote to no, and that's why the votes are that way. But anyway, like there are 44 Democratic senators who are saying, no, we're going to keep the government closed. 12 votes since the beginning of this government shutdown, every single time. Now, starting November 1st, the Department of Agriculture have said, we don't have the money for SNAP benefits, aka food stamps. You're on your own, people who are getting food stamps. That's going to hurt some people, right? I go through the jolt. I understand there's a perception of federal workers being overpaid or getting too generous benefits or lazy, and I'm sure. But there are all kinds of people who get affected by this. And I go down the list like, firefighters at military bases or civilian employees. They didn't ask for any of this. This isn't their fault. TSA workers in Mobile, Alabama are getting a second gig as an Uber driver or selling plasma. Look, I'm saying this hoping I will not get felt up next time I go through the air. But basically, TSA workers, you didn't deserve this. You didn't ask that. Every military base, they got coffee shops. They got restaurants that are just outside who get their client bases for people there. They're not doing that. There's a good story about Blue Ridge Parkway maintenance work employees in North Carolina. Swing state. You get laid off. You got to find temporary work. But also, if you get another job, well, then your government work, your government job could come back tomorrow, or maybe not for another week, or maybe not another month, or maybe not till the end next year. Nobody knows how long this government shutdown is going to go on. So, as these Democratic senators, and they said, look, they recognize public sector unions complain about this, putting pressure on them. But as Hickenlooper said, is it worth that extra week? It's tough. Trust me, it's hard calculus to figure out. Hard calculus. Now, I hope he says that to all of his staff who aren't getting paid right now. But don't worry, U.S. senators do get paid. And in case you're wondering, John Hickenlooper is worth, about $30 million because he co-owns a brewery.
Yeah, no kidding. So first of all, the 27th Amendment was a terrible idea, the one that says you can't change a lawmaker's pay during that particular Congress. And so suspending their pay would probably put a little bit of pain on a lot of these folks. The other thing is I hope our friend Schmidlapp primaries John Hickenlooper in 2026 out there in Colorado. I think that would be a worthwhile effort. But the other thing here, Jim, is, the reason these union statements matter is because, you get people on different sides of an issue endorsing the people or the position on the issue that you would expect them to. It doesn't matter. It's just piling up allies. It's when somebody crosses over against their normal interest that suddenly you kind of perk up. So it's not like we're suddenly going to be, the American Federation of Government Employees, yeah, they're right all the time. No, but the fact that they're going against the grain here is what matters here, and the pilot unions are obviously fed of it as well. So I don't know if it'll make a difference. They're pretty dug in, and I know they want some nugget of a victory for reopening, and I don't think it's coming. The pressure's just piling up, and if we do get to the point where food stamps stop, they're really going to be feeling it.
Now, Greg, I don't want to recite the entire Morning Jolt, but on this podcast, I probably should mention that I did manage to work in a reference or use the useful historical example from 24. and Jack Bauer's methods of negotiations. And if you're trying to get somebody to tell you where nerve gas canisters are, it doesn't do any good to shoot him in the kneecap. He's prepared for that. He's not prepared for you to shoot his wife. And that's, But ironically, I went back and I checked that it didn't work. RoboCop's a very tough guy. He wasn't going to give up the information in any circumstance. But I was just kind of observing, whether you like this or not, Democrats are in the position of hostage taking, in that if they don't get what they want, they are not going to reopen the government, right? If you're in the hostage taker position, you want the pain to be as bad as possible, because the pain is what pressures the other guy to make the concession. Now, one of the reasons I think this is not good is, one, this is generally done by Chuck Schumer feeling insecure about his position in the party. He thinks the left-wing grassroots going to get mad at him. But the other thing is that it's put him in a situation where the Democrats have to cause as much pain as possible to government workers, which is traditionally one of their big constituencies. It's a really weird, odd situation. And so I think it's what we saw here from the government's public sector unions is what are we doing here? Why are we being held hostage by Chuck Schumer of all people? We're used to being held hostage by Republicans. Ted Cruz, guys like that. We expect that. But Chuck, what are you doing here? And I think he's, put himself in a box canyon.
Yeah, Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer doesn't even know what he's doing anymore. Just trying to save his own bacon. But that would be kind of probably the most boring way to put a plot twist into 24 is, Jack Bauer and the team's got somebody cornered, and all of a sudden Bill Buchanan comes on and goes, Jack, government shutdown. You got to pull back.
Yeah. Well, in that circumstance, but I believe CTU, we've argued what government agency it was under. We think it was Department of Defense. Jack Bauer would indisputably be not just like a what's the term?
Rogue?
Essential worker. Probably he's the most essential worker. The entire rest of the U.S. government killed 2 guys in the entirety of the season. Jack Bauer, second leading cause of death among Arab males between age 20 and 40, except for cancer. But Jack Bauer was close, right? So look at that. They'd say, Jack, I'm sorry, you're not getting paid. And we all know Bauer would do it because he doesn't do it for his country. He does it because he enjoys it. That's what makes him a hero.
That's right. He'd be the one essential employee that David Palmer would leave on the job.
Yeah. Chloe would walk off. Chloe would call in sick the next day. That's it. But actually, it wouldn't matter if she called in sick the next day because everything happens within 24 hours.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right. All right. Well, let's talk about something much better than Chuck Schumer's wandering attempt to appease his base, and that is Boll and Branch and their signature sheets. Mrs. Crumbus and I have been enjoying the signature sheets from Boll and Branch. We got kind of this dark color. I can't even remember what it was called. Didn't seem like an actual color name, but they look great. They feel great. They get softer with every wash. The corners stay around the corners of the mattresses. They could not be more comfortable, and you really can feel the difference when you have Boll and Branch sheets on the bed.
Greg, fall may be the very best time of year to sleep. And I'm not just saying because the Jets offense most weeks put me to sleep. I'm saying that because it's cool, right? But a lot of the time of year, it's too hot in summer, or it's too cold in winter, or something like that. This is why you want the Boll and Branch signature sheets. They're breathable to sleep in, so you can add more layers without making your bed feel heavy or hot. They're made with the highest quality 100% organic cotton in durable designs. And they come with a 30 Nate. Yes, if you have 30 guys named Nate, 29 of them are going to say it's awesome. The last one, he's going to be a little shaky. No, it's a 30-night worry-free guarantee.
Start building your sanctuary of comfort this fall with Boll and Branch. For a limited time, get 20% off your first set of sheets, plus free shipping at bollandbranch.com/3martini. Spell that out, 3martini. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/3martini to save 20% and unlock free shipping. Exclusions do apply. All right, Jim. So while there may be some momentum in favor of Republicans in Washington, D.C. on the shutdown fight, and by the way, the House passed a continuing resolution that expires on November 21st. So even if the Senate does pass this, we're going to be right back at it.
Might need another one. Yeah, real fast.
Real quickly. So, but out in California, right after Texas decided to redistrict following those court decisions, and then Gavin Newsom decided that he, of course, has to hog the spotlight and goes with his redistricting plan to basically remove Republicans from the California congressional delegation. It looked like this could be a pretty tough fight for Gavin Newsom. Polls kind of before he actually launched the initiative showed people were against it. Then it showed it at about 50-50, and now it appears that Republicans are not only going to lose They're surrendering a week ahead of Election Day. Politico, Republicans appear to have all but abandoned their efforts to defeat a Democratic gerrymander of California's House districts 1 week before it goes before voters. As Democrats pummel the state with Yes on 50 advertising, that's Proposition 50, the Republican side of the battle has gone quiet. Major GOP donors and party leaders have effectively vanished from the front lines. Get these numbers, Jim. The biggest funder of the campaign to defeat Proposition 50, Charles Munger Jr., has not contributed any significant cash to the cause in weeks, and his Protect Voters First committee cut its weekly spending from more than $4 million to less than $300. The other opposition committee, Stop Sacramento's Power Grab, spent $155,000 on advertising last week, compared to $3.8 million from Governor Gavin Newsom's Yes on 50 campaign. And so, it's appeared to be a 50-50 issue. Now it's looking more like 62% in favor of it. So kind of feels like a lost cause. In California, you knew it was going to be an uphill fight, Jim, especially when they can just say Trump, 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 Trump in all the ads. But the fact that they're basically quitting a week before Election Day is pretty disheartening.
Greg, $300 in the state of California can get you a gallon of gas or a candy bar. No, I believe I mentioned yesterday that's about $5 a gallon out there. So like maybe 60 gallons, right? So, that's, look, as you acknowledged, we kind of knew this was going to be an uphill climb, that, Newsom and his allies were going to say, we're going to try to turn this into a referendum on Trump. California is still a very Democratic state. Trump is still very unpopular there. I think one of the, let's put it, it's not like they have no advantages. Arnold Schwarzenegger has been all over the television saying that, look, when we pass this and put this in the state constitution back when I was governor, we did this because we believed, by the way, there are Republicans who complain about the bipartisan commission and say it's not that bipartisan and the Republicans on it are only nominal. I get that. But if nothing else, you've got a commission of people who aren't in the state legislature picking the lines for the state legislature, right? You've got people who are not creating the lines for themselves. I think that was a major step in the right direction. And this had been a crusade for a bunch of California Democrats for decades. They said, look, you're going to have to, redistrict every couple of years, every 10 years anyway. You want to take the decision out of the hands of lawmakers. You want to put it in the hands of somebody else who's at least nominally fair-minded or something. And that way you don't have the ridiculous gerrymanders. And you don't have we're going to take this little part of this district over here, a long stretch of road, and then another district, community over there. This is what you're going to go back to. And the idea that, we're Democrat, we have to do this because for fairness, when they already have an enormous advantage, that's kind of really absurd and ludicrous about this. And so it's frustrating, but I think it's a demonstration of the partisan passions. And I look, this was, as we mentioned, this was always going to be tough. And if you're a California donor, maybe you feel like there's other better ways you can donate your money, and that maybe you feel like, why throw good money after bad? But it also feels like this turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy, that if you're not going to have that message out there of people saying, no, we made this decision, this was going to be a way to make our politics better, a whole bunch of Democrats signed on to this, and the moment it became inconvenient, they tossed it out the window. And to me, I always found that to be a compelling argument there, that either you want redistricting to be nonpartisan or you don't. You can't be, I want it to be nonpartisan until it starts hurting me, and then I want it to be partisan again. No, it's not the way this works. But apparently California Democrats, yes, it does.
Yeah, exactly. And now Republicans doing the same thing in North Carolina. Yep. Looks like Indiana. So
everybody's going to do mid-district, in Maryland, they want to get rid of the one seat they've got,
Yes. Yeah, it's insane. And so congratulations, Gavin Newsom, I guess, preemptively. He'll certainly tout that as a feather in his cap for the base, as he slightly considers running for president here, as we mentioned yesterday. Hasn't made up his mind at all on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, Republicans in California or wherever, maybe you're just not spending your money wisely, and that's why you only have $300 left to focus on this anti-Proposition 50 campaign. But what about your own wallet? Does it feel like money just disappears each month? You think, we didn't have any major expenses this month, and then you get the statements and you're like, we hardly saved anything. And so whether it's from subscriptions piling up to impulse buys after seeing an ad on your phone, or ordering takeout a few too many times? Rocket Money helps you rein it in by showing you where your money is going. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings.
With Rocket Money, you can get alerts if your bills increase in price. Seems like the sort of thing you should automatically be getting alerts for, but it's good to have Rocket Money to do that. If there's unusual activity on your accounts, if you're close to get it going over budget, hey, I can think of like at least two places that could use this. Sacramento and Washington. And they'll even tell you when you're doing a good job of savings. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you. Now, they can't really do much with the state of California, but the app will automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save, and they'll even talk to customer service so you don't have to.
Rocket Money has saved users more than $2.5 billion, including more than $880 million in canceled subscriptions alone. How much are we subscribing to? Their 10 million members save up to $740 per year when they use all of the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/martini today. That's rocketmoney.com/martini. All right, Jim, while I was out last week, you and Craig got to cover the the saga of Graham Platner in Maine, the oyster farmer who is also a Marine, and it turns out kind of loose with his comments on Reddit and everywhere else for 20 years leading up to at least 2021 and beyond. He's still endorsed by Bernie Sanders, was the darling of the far left for the most part until the last few days. And then as soon as Janet Mills got in this race, all of a sudden a lot of bad news about Graham Platner came out. So I'm guessing Janet Mills' opposition research team is pretty good, or at least had all this stuff figured out before she finally decided to get into this race. And so from crazy comments, insulting large swaths of the state, to the big tattoo story last week that he got during his time in the service that was certainly a symbol from the Nazi era. Things have not turned out well for Platner. There had been a poll out last week showing him up by 34 on Janet Mills, and then there was a new poll in the last couple of days showing Mills up 5. So either one of those was way off, or this scandal has done a lot of damage, which is kind of what you would want to do, given the circumstances of this particular story. The latest news in this campaign is that Platner's new campaign manager, this is a guy named Kevin Brown, just started last Tuesday at the same time that the tattoo scandal broke. So great timing there. He's now stepping down from his position, according to Axios. He says, Graham is a dear friend. I started this campaign Tuesday, but found out Friday we have a baby on the way. Graham deserves someone who is 100% in on his race, and we want to lean into this new experience as a family, so it was best we step back sooner than later so Graham can get the manager he deserves. You know, Kevin, congratulations. I hope you and your wife have a very healthy baby, smooth pregnancy. Something tells me, though, that you got this news and you're like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, this is also a great reason to get out of this dumpster fire that I'm in and let somebody else handle this thing that now has no chance of succeeding. So, Jim, what do you make of this particular twist in the story?
Greg, I don't want to get religious here, but I would call that an immaculately timed conception. Also, Sheryl Sandberg, I blame you for the fact that lean in now gets shoehorned into every public statement on everything. Look, sometimes pregnancies are a surprise. I guess you could say that when it comes to the Platner campaign, he did not see that coming. He did not see that coming.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So Jim, as you look at this, go ahead.
Well, okay, there's just one other, which is that this is not the first person who has left the campaign rather suddenly. Genevieve McDonald, former state representative, was going to be Platner's political director. In fact, was his political director since the beginning of the campaign. Resigned last Friday. Said that she claimed that roughly a month ago, he had told her that he had a tattoo that, quote, could be problematic, unquote. Now, the term problematic gets tossed around here, but yeah, I think the SS symbol is problematic. So I wrote about this Friday. I don't know if Graham Platner is a Nazi. I don't know if when he watches the Indiana Jones movies, he roots for the bad guys. I don't know that when he watches Sound of Music, he feels confused and relates to Rolf, right? I don't know what's in his heart. But I'll make this, there are a couple things on his version of events really doesn't make him look good. And in fact, the exculpatory version of events makes him seem so dumb. That's disqualifying for being in the Senate by itself. But also just flatly, I don't believe him. And here's why. So first of all, he's a guy who go in Croatia, it's 2007, he goes into it, he's drunk, goes into a tattoo parlor and says, I want that skull and crossbones. And he does not recognize that is the Totenkopf of the Nazi SS. So he's also, we are told, a military history buff who devours military history books. He, just didn't recognize for 18 years. Then on these Reddit forums, he's talking about other guys in the Marines who have the SS, lightning bolt logo tattoo. And he says it's a mark of honor to them or something. And it's not, he's defending them. So by the way, this whole, I'm not familiar with Nazi symbols. Well, you kind of were, right? So you remembered what Nazi symbols were years ago. And in the meantime, and at no point, this thing that's right on your chest, you're looking in the mirror every morning. You don't see any connection. He never recognizes the skull and crossbones from any movie that's got Nazis in it over the last 18 years. Okay. We've got the Jewish Insider report that says he knew exactly what this tattoo was like more than a decade ago. Even then, let's say that person's making up the story. But let's say that Jiminy McDonald says a month ago he said he had a tattoo that could be problematic. Well, why did he think it was problematic if he didn't know until very recently that this was a Nazi tattoo? And here's the thing. Greg, you are one of the most decent men I know. If you found out you'd accidentally gotten a Nazi tattoo, how many speed limit laws would you break getting that thing? Or would you just take out a knife and cut it off right there, right? Like this is the mark of the Nazi. And currently, Graham Platner, at least according to his political director, someone who's got no incentive to lie, right? Or she's a disgruntled employee, he says. Oh, okay, all right. So she says a month ago, and he just says, oh, well, I guess I have a Nazi tattoo. Well, I'll get that off someday. I'll take it off in a while.
I'll get around to it.
Leisurely, I'll get around. Now, I'm a procrastinator on a lot of things, right? That just seems like. By the way, would you go to get rid of the two really fast when you're running for U.S. Senate? That's the other last thing. So my conclusion is that for whatever reason, at minimum a month ago, maybe decades ago, or more than a decade ago, he knew this was a Nazi tattoo, and he just wasn't that motivated to get rid of it. Now, here's the thing. I think if you have a tattoo of the SS on you and you keep it for a really long time, you are functionally a neo-Nazi. I don't believe you when you say you're not a neo-Nazi because, A, most people don't accidentally get Nazi tattoos, and you really have to look around for people who are not neo-Nazis who keep the Nazi tattoo for a long time and say, I'll get rid of it when I feel like it.
Yeah, I can just see Bernie saying, I'm not going to withdraw the endorsement, but you should have got that thing lasered. I just tell him.
Right, he's getting a magic marker trying to cross it out or something.
So here's the question in my mind, Jim. There's the principled version of assessing this and the Machiavellian way of assessing this. On the one hand, the Machiavellian way, your instinct is, oh, man, why didn't this come out after he won the nomination? And then Susan Collins could have cruised to re-election. The downside is this insane person is one vote away from actually being in the U.S. Senate. The flip side is it comes out now. Janet Mills most likely wins the primary, and now Susan Collins has a much, much tougher, potentially, race to win that seat. So what's your gut instinct when you hear a story like that? Good that he's getting bludgeoned for it now, or darn, should have come out in the general election?
Greg, all the really important things about Nazis I learned from a famous archaeologist professor who said, I hate these guys. Yeah. And so I want to see Graham Platner metaphorically buried as quickly as possible. I don't want him anywhere near the levers of government. I don't want him to have a major party Senate nomination. I don't want him to operate heavy machinery. I don't want him to host a cooking show. There's just nothing. I want nothing to do with this guy. So, but also, again, since we're getting close to Election Day here in Virginia, dear Ed Gillespie, I've always liked you, and I thought you would have made a great governor. Hire Janet Mills' opposition research team because your guys missed the yearbook photo of the Klansman and or blackface, right? There's no good option there. This came out right after. Good job, everybody. Janet Mills, like, she's bringing it, right, for the oldster. So, as we've discussed in the past, Susan Collins, like, last time around, trailed every poll, won by 8 points, right? So this is a opponent who's a much stronger candidate. I think Collins is a pretty safe bet for re-election either way. Things could happen, things could go wrong, but I think Collins is pretty strong. So I think either one of them is beatable. You run against Mills on age, and yes, Collins is 72. But when your opponent is 77, you're the fresh young face in the race. And when your opponent is a Nazi, you run against them on being a Nazi and the fact that, yes, there are other troubling positions, but most notably, my opponent's biggest flaw is that he's a friggin' Nazi. That would be, the attack ads I would recommend.
Yes. Out of all the goals in the main Senate race, not getting the Nazi any further along than he already is. Yeah, I should probably.
As far as we know, Janet Mills has no Nazi tattoos. Now, do we have to do a strip down? Does everybody have to show?
No, we definitely don't.
One last point about the campaign manager leaving after a week, saying, my wife's pregnant, it would be easier if we hadn't already had the political director leave. And all these people who are not on the Platner campaign are saying, it's fine, this is a hullabaloo. You, the public, should not be concerned that he has a Nazi tattoo. It'll blow over. And everybody who leaves the campaign is like they've seen the flaming skull of Satan or something. Like what? There's a butt tattoo of Stalin? Like, I don't know what else could be out there that's worse. But like, they all act like, oh man, I got to get off this campaign as quickly as possible. And there's a sign that like there may be some other shoe to drop or goose step. I don't know.
Unbelievable. I had a feeling this campaign was going down. I had no idea it was going to go down like this and so quickly. But
we missed you last week, Greg. This was because I've written about it a bunch of times, and people might say, Jim, why are you so focused on this campaign? I'm like, because he's a Nazi. But also like somebody accidentally getting a Nazi tattoo is like the sort of thing you would see on the HBO series Veep or in a Christopher Buck. It's like so absurd. It's such a ridiculous exaggeration of the sort of embarrassing character questioning scandal you could have. I didn't know it was a Nazi tattoo. That's what they're going with.
Yeah.
And he accidentally kept it for 18 years.
And a lot of lefties on social media were trying to excuse it too. So that was crazy.
Again, we're running long, but just this last point, because I was, my poor family, I'm ranting and raving about this all weekend. Greg, let's say in the most unlikely thing in the world, you came out and said, hey, by the way, I accidentally got an SS tattoo. I would still do this podcast with you. I'd still be your friend, but I'd be like, dude, what happened? How, I'd want some answers. I would be really confused, disturbed, bothered. I suspect, and here's the thing. Almost everybody in like lefty progressive media defended Platner like that.
Yeah.
Right? Instantaneous. Yeah. They didn't blink. There was no questioning. And all Platner did was show up and say things that they like. So they are showing loyalty to Platner that I think a lot of people might not show their most beloved family members. Right? Would your family still love you? Yeah, but I think they'd be like, how did you get that? What happened? Wait, is there anything about you haven't told us? This sort of thing. So that's like, how do you inspire that kind of, when people in our world say liberalism is a mental disease, I think that's hyperbolic. I think that's disrespectful to a whole bunch of, decent Americans who just happen to hold differing points of view. But like, this does seem kind of like a cult-like unthinking phenomenon in which when you're willing to go out there and say, there's no reason to worry about this Nazi tattoo. Yeah, there is. Yes, there is. So, yeah. So, particularly when, everybody, you get called a Nazi if you want like low taxes or stuff. Yes.
So, yeah, as I think about this, I think about the fact that I'm really glad that I grew up when I did. I've always been glad I grew up when I did. You got parents, you got a stable, loving, Bible-believing home, but we also grew up in an era where there wasn't a big push for facial hair and not a big push for tattoos. So never even entered the mind. We grew up in the sweet spot, Jim.
I have no embarrassing tattoos. I also have no cool tattoos. Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, we'll call it for today. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Tuesday. Join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.